Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is good. Hope you had a good weekend. I did. Workbench is clear. The project is done. I have yet to hang it, so I haven't taken final pictures. I'll show it to you probably tomorrow. But today we're going to talk about a book, and this is a book I finished this weekend that I want to talk about. I read another book before this that I haven't talked about. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it. I don't know. I don't know that I can just keep reviewing every book I possibly can, but whatever. We'll see. But this book I want to talk about in particular because it wasn't very good, and I gave it 4 stars. This book is called Thief River Falls, and the author is Brian Freeman. I've not read anything of Brian Freeman's before. This is the first time. And like I said, it wasn't a very good book for certain particular reasons. But then I ended up rating it 4 stars anyway. In fact, if the reasons that I'm about to complain about were addressed, this would have been a 5-star book for me. But here's the thing, and here's the hard part about talking about this book is I can't review it without spoilers. It's one of those things, right? It's one of those books that if you want to read it, do not watch the rest of this video and go read it. I can tell you a little bit. It's a book about a woman who's an author who her whole life fell apart like within the last 2 years or whatever, and so she moved out of her town of Thief River Falls and to like an hour north. She wrote a book about whatever, and her book kind of in some weird way comes true. And people asked her, like, have you ever worried about one of your books coming true? Because she uses a lot of like actual people in her books, like she uses their names and everything. So she wakes up one night, there's some cops outside her house, they seem to be brandishing weapons. She panics, they leave, and then she finds a boy in her yard. And so the boy has amnesia, and he says he witnessed a murder, and now she's on a quest to figure out what happened, and she thinks the police are involved. That's as much as I can give you without spoilers. I mean, I can tell you again that I didn't like the book and I gave it 4 stars. Not that I didn't like it, or I wouldn't have given it 4 stars, but here's the thing. I don't know why I finished this book. I almost put it down and just walked away. It was aggravating, and then it pays off. So here, I can't go any further. So if you want to read it, go read it. I can tell you that the author, I really like his writing style. I really like his pacing. I like he interjects. We jump characters a few times just for fill, and it's not really super important to the story, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing characters come to life a little bit instead of just being ragdolls. So all of that stuff is cool, and I think it's worth reading for that. But here's the thing. All right, final warning. According to my Kindle, it's at 91% when you find out that the narrator or the POV, the main character of this book, is an unreliable narrator. Now, sure, if you're reading mysteries a lot and you read into this as you're reading, or you pay really close attention, you might have picked up on details. I picked up on some. A lot of those details that I picked up on are the reason I almost didn't finish the book. Right? There is zero indication from anybody involved in this book until 91% that this character is unreliable. And what I mean by that is, this boy doesn't exist. And yet she goes through the world and people interact with her as if he does. Or they at least humor her because of who she is. And it just becomes this super frustrating, like, what the hell? Like, here's the thing. She has to be the dumbest main character I've ever read. She does some of the dumbest possible things. Even knowing that she's unreliable, even knowing that she's having a mental break, even knowing all that, her decisions still feel wrong. To the point that I was like, why am I reading this book? This person is obviously mentally challenged. Like, she is incapable of making basic decisions in any intelligent way. Like, how this woman became a successful thriller writer, I'll never know. And so I almost quit because there are just some moments where you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? But then you find out she's an unreliable narrator, and suddenly, and you become much more invested in her as a character. And the ending is great. It's a really good. The last 10% really makes up for all of the torment that the author puts you through because this character is so dumb. And I think so. If the character's decisions could have been justified a little bit better, this would have been a 5-star book for me. For instance, she's running from the cops. She's seeing, conspiracy theories everywhere. This boy's being hunted. She's being hunted. She knows this. This is technically true. Like, they are looking for her and they are putting up roadblocks for her for an entirely different reason. But she is being sought out. So on the run, this boy has disappeared multiple times. And she's had to go traipse off to find him again because, she turned her back for 2 seconds and then he's gone because he's not freaking there, obviously. But whatever. And she's had to go find him. There's moments like that where she's running from the cops, that she just hit a guy over the head. She's now running from the cops. She tells this boy, we got to make a stop. And she stops at like a diner in her hometown to get some pancakes. In a place where literally everybody in this little town knows who she is. Like, what are you doing? What is your what? Obviously not thinking rationally. And once you know that, sure, I guess you can you can say, well, that was her rational brain saying this isn't actually a problem, let's just get some pancakes. But it's still, like, if that part had been kind of worked through a little bit better, those parts, there's lots of parts like that where she does something completely nonsensical. Like, early on, so these detectives come looking for this boy. She knows something's up. They tell her there's a manhunt. They're looking for a man or whatever. She goes to visit a person. That person tells her they're looking for somebody. These detectives came to her house looking for somebody, whatever. She calls a friend of hers who is an FBI agent and asks him to follow up. And he does. And is like, nah, there's no manhunt. Which further impounds her, like, it further enforces her conspiracy theory about this police department chasing this boy, because this boy saw them kill somebody or whatever. It reinforces all of that. And instead of calling the FBI agent at any point in this story and saying, listen, this boy tells me this is what's happening, oh my God, she just doesn't do any of that. And she's like, well, I have to find this out for myself. And she goes on this weird investigative journey where she's breaking and entering into places and looking for clues. And at some point, she thinks that this man that got murdered, that this boy witnessed this murder, she thinks this man is buried in the graveyard. They dug a shallow grave. So she's like, well, I have to dig him up. Once I dig him up and find his body, that's all. Then I can go to the cops. And it's just, what? What is no? So even knowing that she's being completely irrational because she's broke, literally like mentally broke, and she's reenacting her book, like all of these steps that she goes through, you find out are the steps of the book. She's reenacting her book. Even after knowing all that, it's still just like, I almost stopped reading the book because she was just so poorly written. If some of that stuff could have been justified a little bit more, like if we could have just kind of made it so that as a reader I wasn't infuriated with this character, I think it would have been a 5-star read for me, because the ending was great. Like, it was a fun wrap up. There's a tiny little hint of a supernatural element. Not that the boy's a ghost or anything like that, but that she has a twin brother, and the twin brother and her share some sort of, mental telepathic communication sort of thing. So there's a little hint of something going on there. but it's not like that's a part of the, a major part of the storyline or anything like that. But it was it was frustrating, but I'm glad I read it. I gave it 4 stars because I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed the unveiling of the whole thing. I enjoyed the tension. Even though it was all fake, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the idea of this. So it's kind of a meta novel about a novel that this writer kind of puts herself in. Very strange, but enjoyable. And I'm probably going to read more of his work at some point. But I cannot tell you. Like Saturday, I was reading and I was just like, I'm done with it. I just can't. This character is so stupid that I just can't continue reading this book. And I think that if there was some way for me to, if there was some way for the author to take those thoughts out of my mind, you keep the illusion going. And if you go back and look, you'll see a lot of inconsistencies. For instance, it's like October, and they're in Minnesota, but she's talking about snow being on the ground in one scene, and the next scene there's mud, and there's no snow, and then it's snowing, and then she leaves the boy in a gazebo outside to play or whatever. Like there's a whole lot of weird inconsistencies like that if you know that she's crazy and you read back through it or you look through it, you'll pick up on a lot of that stuff, and that's great. But I feel like just her actions as a main and some of these actions. So the stopping at the diner was one of those things that was just like, what the F are you doing? And that scene had nothing to do with the book. Could have completely written it off. Has zero to do, and so instead of putting me through that as a reader and me thinking this person is absolutely insane, just don't put it in the book. Like it had nothing to do with it. So yeah, it's weird, but enjoyable in some weird way. If you enjoy kind of putting yourself through reading something that maybe isn't working for you just to see how it ends, this might be that kind of book for you. But now that I've told you the secret, I think that completely ruins the book. So maybe in a couple of years you'll forget about it and read it. Anyway, I enjoy doing book reviews, but I feel like they're just not. I don't know what I feel like. It's a weird thing to put here because for all these years it's just been a diary. This isn't really diary material. I don't know if I'm going to continue, but I will get to a bunch of your questions and thoughts. This week is the 8th anniversary of the show, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you for being here as always. Oh, that was Thief River Falls by Brian Freeman. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart as unassuming. It's an adjective meaning modest and unpretentious. The Bigamans just bought a lovely, unassuming 5,000 square foot chalet in the Rockies. Unassuming. UNASSUMING. Yeah, that's very unassuming. Do any of you own a 5,000 square foot chalet? My house is like 2,500 square feet.